Hi everybody, I'm Tony. Back in October 2024, a South Korean site dropped a wild story. Apparently, about 5 years ago, North Korea arrested 12 women who engaged in sexual activity for money. And here's the crazy part. The regime sentenced them all to death. This news really shocked me. I mean, come on. In the US, the worst case you go to jail for a little bit or just pay a fine. Most time, prosecutors in those big cities don't even bother. And the death penalty? That's next level insanity. And you see, in our mind, North Korea is supposed to be this super strict, repressed society, right? So how the hell does sex worker even exist there? And why would anyone still risk it when getting caught could literally mean the death penalty? Well, after digging into it, I found out this is not an isolated incident. Prostitution in North Korea is actually really common. Like basically, it's an open secret. So in today's video, we're going to talk about Pyongyang's underground sex industry and why people are willing to risk their lives to be part of it. If you watched my last video, fashion icon Kim Jong-il, you'll remember one of the most famous propaganda movie he produced was called The Flower Girl. It told the story of a poor young woman found a new life by selling flowers. But in today's North Korea, there are still flower girls. And yes, they have also found a new life, but not selling flowers. The only thing they're really selling is themselves. So in today's Pyongyang, those so-called flower girls are divided into different categories. Young women up to their early 20s are called the red flowers. Unmarried women in their 20s, blue flowers. Married women are labeled yellow flowers, and widows, they are purple flowers. By now, you probably get the point. In Pyongyang, flower girl is just another word for sex workers. Here's the thing. Unlike the most outsiders imagine, today's Pyongyang isn't some land of repression or celibacy. It's quite the opposite. It's basically a capital of lust. Sex worker isn't just everywhere, it's out in the open. Now if you're wondering why these so-called flower girls even exist and who those girls are, it all comes down to one simple thing. Who gets to eat and who doesn't. So what I mean by that? See, in North Korea, how much food you will receive depends on what social class you are in. And North Korea split their people into 3 social classes. First, you have the elite class. And at the very top, you have got Kim's family and their closest friends. These people never worry about food, lobster, caviar, and the good stuff, always on the table. Remember Kim Jong-il's Japanese chef Kenji Fujimoto? He and his family were part of this circle. And within the elite class, just right below them, you have about 20,000 families tied to Kim Il-sung's old comrades. They were not eating lobster, but chicken, duck, and fish, not a problem. Then comes the military and the party officials and their families. They ate simpler, but still more than enough food. So those 3 groups make up the elite class. Below them is the so-called wavering class, about half the population. These are just ordinary North Koreans who on paper were supposed to get a full month of ration, but in reality only got about 15 days of worth. And at the very bottom, the hostile class. That's about 40% of the country. Those are families of political prisoners, Christians, anyone with relatives in South Korea or Japan. People in this group usually get minimum amount of ration, and when the food ran short, they got nothing. So you see the problem. If you are not in the elite class, you don't usually get enough ration to survive. Now you might say, well, if the government isn't giving me enough, I can just get a job, right? Well, not in North Korea. See, you don't go out and find a job there. The government assigns everyone their job. You'll probably think, wow, that sounds amazing. No resume, no interview, no unemployment. Socialism sounds pretty sweet, right? But don't get excited too soon. If you're labeled as part of wavering class or worse, the hostile class, it doesn't matter how smart or capable you will never get into college, never land a decent job, and you will never have a social connection that the elite use to get rich. So what kind of job do you usually get? For people in those lower classes, the government usually throw them into some depressing stay-around factories. If you are lucky, you make 3,000 to 5,000 North Korean dollar a month. That's like 20 to 30 US dollars. And that's a good outcome. If you are unlucky, you are sent to dig coal in the mountain, shovel in boiler rooms, and do the dirtiest, most back-breaking jobs. The point is that money you earn won't buy you more than a few pounds of rice. So to avoid starving, people have to be creative. And for many women, that means becoming a flower girl. One North Korean defector who escaped from Pyongyang told South Korean media about what really happens in Pyongyang after dark. According to him, once the clock hits 10 p.m., along a main street outside Pyongyang, the side streets suddenly fill up with flower girls. The whole area is about 4 square kilometers, and while nobody knows how many sex workers are out there, he said it's a sizable crowd. But here's the thing, not like a regular red light district, the area is super quiet. These women are not waving you down or catcalling customers. They just stand there quietly waiting for someone to approach them. But here's the part that really puzzled me. Remember, North Korea is basically a blackout capital, meaning in the most area of Pyongyang, they only get about 5 hours of electricity a day. If you pull up a GPS map at night, and the whole country is pitch black, looks more like Amazon rainforest than a city. So my question is, how do these guys even see who they're picking up at 10 p.m.? Do they seriously bring a flashlight, shining it in women's face like they're ghost hunting? Just imagine how awkward that could be. Alright, now picture this. You flash a light on some girls, think she looks good, and walk right up and asking, how much for the night? But what if she's just a housewife taking a walk after dinner? Say that to her and she will probably smack you right in the face. That's why in Pyongyang, people don't ask directly. They use code words. The most common ones are, got any eggs for sale? Or how much for a flower? And everyone knows exactly what that means. So how do those flower girls in North Korea set their price? Well, just like the rest of the world, it mostly comes down to age and body type. The youngest and the most attractive ones, the so-called red flower, can make about $20 to $30 per transaction. Meanwhile, the older ones, like a yellow flower in their 40s, might only get around $5. Now that might not sound like much to us, but in North Korea, $10 can buy you about 20 pounds of rice. Even $5 can mean 10 pounds of rice. That's enough to keep a whole family from starving. So yeah, even being a yellow flower still pays pretty well by Pyongyang standards. But here is where things get really awkward. You finally pick someone, agree on a price, but the problem is, where are you gonna finish this transaction? In the US, you just hit up a hotel, or maybe an even Airbnb. But in North Korea, they don't have those things. Well, before you try to roast me, there are indeed 3 hotels in Pyongyang, but they are all reserved for foreigners. North Korean cannot just book a room. So what happens instead? The girl usually takes you back to her place. The problem is, housing in North Korea is insanely cramped. It's common for an entire extended family to live under one roof, which means when you are taken back to her home, chances are her husband, her parents, or even her siblings are right there in the same apartment. Well, at this point, you're probably thinking, wait, their husband just let this happen right in front of them? Don't they care? Are they into it or something? So let me clear that one up. No man enjoys this. Sure, maybe there are a few guys with some unusual kinks, but for average men, no, it's humiliating. The problem is that what choice do they have? If there is no food on the table and your wife can bring in rice by selling herself, then survival comes first. They accept it not because they want to, but because the system leaves them no other options. Now here's something important to understand. In North Korea, there isn't really a concept of a housewife. Communist ideology preaches gender equality to the extreme. Men and women both have to work. So for generations, it's been totally normal for women to earn money. North Korean men don't see being supported by their wives as shameful. That whole idea of being a capped man doesn't really exist there. So here's the case, right? You might assume since North Korea is in East Asia, it must be super conservative when it comes to sex. That's what I thought too, but it turns out that's not the case. Take the infamous pleasure squad for example. Young, beautiful women were handpicked to entertain their leader. To the outside world, it sounds like Jeffrey Epstein's island, shady and notorious. But inside North Korea, many people actually saw it as a golden opportunity. Why? Because once you are chosen, you are guaranteed food, clothing, and shelter. And when you retire, usually before the age of 30, and you even get a super nice severance package. Most of them are then married off to rising officials. And if that happens, the woman basically leaps into the elite class, and her whole family comes with her as well. So for many North Korean women, it comes down to this. Either hope you are picked for pleasure squad, or you have to sell yourself just to survive. Now you might ask, wait, doesn't the North Korean government crack down on this? Well, not really. Most of the time, they turn a blind eye. The Kim family knows perfectly well that regular people don't sell themselves unless they're starving. And on the flip side, the customers are usually government or military officials. So they're basically the regime's own people. If they actually crack it down, they would end up angering everyone from top to bottom. But hold on. You remember at the beginning I mentioned 12 women were supposedly executed for being involved in the sex trade? So here's the twist. They were not. In the final hour, Kim Jong-un granted them a pardon. None of them were actually shot. Why? Simple. This news itself is a propaganda. He wants to project this image of being a merciful leader, the kind of guy who shows compassion. Basically a PR move to win favor with different social classes inside the country. But what he didn't expect was the story leaked, and the outside world suddenly realized, even behind North Korea's curtain, there is a thriving sex industry. But here's the thing, those street girls I mentioned earlier, that's actually just a low end of Pyongyang's sex industry. Believe it or not, there's also a premium version. Flower girls working karaoke. And I know what some of you guys are thinking. North Korea is socialist, right? They don't even allow karaoke. Well, Pyongyang has karaoke, just not for you and me. It's strictly for the elites. According to a 2020 report, North Korean authorities busted a man in Pyongyang who was running several well-known karaoke bars, catering exclusively to the wealthy. And these were not just sing-along spots. This place supplied young, beautiful women, the so-called red flowers. Now remember how I said even the top street girls might only make $20 per customer. At the karaoke bars, the price jumped to anywhere between $200 to $500. In North Korea, that's an insane amount of money. More than what a lower-end elite class family earns in an entire month. So what makes these karaoke girls so different? Well, first of all, their looks and bodies are next level. Even the prettiest street worker cannot compete. But it's not just about looks, it's about the experience. Think of it as a deluxe service. Here's how it usually works. You walk into a private room, sit down, and the staff brings a whole lineup of girls. You pick the one you like the most, then she will sit down next to you, then the night begins. Drinking, singing, chatting is all part of the package. And only after all of that, things finally turn sexual. So here's the key. These girls are not just pretty faces. They have got to know how to talk, how to charm, how to make you feel like you are special. Basically, they're selling emotional value on top of physical service. That's why not just any North Korean girl can get into this line of work. You need looks, brains, and social skills to play at this level. So where do you even find this kind of girls? Some of you might have already guessed, universities. So like I mentioned before, in North Korea, only kids from elite class families can get into college in the first place. So unlike those desperate street girls in the outer district who sell themselves just to survive, those university girls are usually in it for money. Some serious money. We're talking about making in one night what your family would normally make in a whole month. The temptation is just too strong to pass up. So even though many of these girls already come from well-off families, plenty of them still go into this line of work. So remember at the beginning, I mentioned this karaoke bar owner in Pyongyang got busted? His place had top-of-line imported equipment. And more importantly, his girls were on another level. They were all university students, mostly from Pyongyang's most prestigious schools. Because of that, his client was stacked with a high-ranking party, government, and military officials. Normally, Kim Jong-un wouldn't even bother cracking down on something like this. He knows it happens. But here's where the guys messed up big time. He started recruiting red flowers from Pyongyang's University of Music and Dance and the Pyongyang University of Drama and Film. So what's so special about those two universities? These two schools are basically Kim's personal hunting ground for his pleasure squad. So when he found out someone else was poaching from his talent pool, he lost it. I mean, imagine if the girls he handpicked for himself were already leftovers from somebody else's party. He certainly doesn't like that. Within a month that karaoke boss was arrested, he was publicly executed. And it didn't stop there. 5 others were shot with him. 3 were regular customers, all of them are party officials in Pyongyang. And the other 2 were young women from those universities, the very flowers he had recruited. But even with all that drama, not many people actually got caught up in this crackdown, which shows you Kim's so-called rage was really more of a warning shot than a total purge. Because again, he doesn't want to anger the whole elite class. And here's the bigger picture. Pyongyang isn't the only red light city under the curtain. All across North Korea's major cities, you can find those flower girls, especially in the border region. In the border region, they mainly serve soldiers. You may say, come on, how much money can a North Korean soldier even have? Well, that depends on where they're stationed. If you are down south near DMZ facing South Korea, yeah, you are basically stuck on the fixed salary, which is not too much. But if you're up north on the Chinese border, that's a whole different story. Those guys are loaded from smuggling. Those soldiers are young, they have lots of energy, and lots of cash to burn, which means demand for sex work there is off the chart. Now compared to Pyongyang, prices are a little lower in these border towns. On average, you are looking at around 50 Chinese dollars, or about $7 for one encounter. But insiders say if you are talking about a university student, the rate jumps to around $100, sometimes even $130. Expensive, but still cheaper than Pyongyang. Now, normally we'll all agree trading sex for money is immoral. But in North Korea, where selling sex might literally be the difference between life and death. So do you think it is more acceptable in this kind of situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, hype, and subscribe. With that, I will see you in the next one.